DC have just announced a new imprint called DC Black Label. What does it mean? What's this all about? Well, we're going to talk about it in this episode. Now, joining me in the Wave Rider as usual are
Stuart,
Rob,
and Ross.
I'm Liam, and this is the Legends of Podcasting.
During the 21st century, comic books conquered the world and murdered everyone's spare time. I have assembled an elite team to hunt comic book stuff down throughout media and to cover their rise to power. Unfortunately, my plan is opposed by general life obligations, meaning instead of daily, we can do this weekly, thanks to something we have sworn our allegiance to: time management. In the future, we ourselves may not be heroes, but if we succeed, we will be remembered as the Legends of Podcasting.
DC launches new publishing imprint DC Black Label, brings edgy and provocative standalone stories to the legends of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. All-star writers Frank Miller, Scott Schneider, Brian Azzarello, Kelly Sue DeConnick, Greg Rucka, and John Ridley join DC Black Label with their ultimate takes on modern superhero storytelling, collaborating with superstar artists John Romita Jr., Greg Capullo, Lee Bermejo, and Phil Jimenez. So that's the top part of that press release that DC have put out on their website. It's actually a really long press release, so if you want to get the full details on that, just go to dccomics.com and you'll find that press release on there. So yeah, they released a new imprint here. Robert, what's your take on this?
Well, those of us with longer memories than DC editorial will remember they tried this a couple of years back with what I think they called it the All-Star imprint at the time. You had two titles that came out of that before the whole thing fell apart, which was the absolutely stellar Superman All-Star Superman, written by Grant Morrison, which I think there's an animated version that came out a few years back as well. And then you had the less fondly remembered All-Star Batman and Robin, written by Frank Miller and illustrated by Jim Lee, which the artwork was probably the most memorable thing about that because it's Jim Lee's artwork. But the impression I get from reading that press release is they're kind of going for a similar vibe, where they're just going to take the biggest names they can get in comics and give them a character and just give them absolute free rein to tell whatever they want to do. Which my big takeaway from that is some absolute madman at DC Comics has given Frank Miller another comic book.
So looking at this, before we go on to you, Stuart and Ross, to hear your thoughts on this, they have got a list of what the first wave of DC Black Label titles are going to be, and I'll just run through these real quickly. So the first one is Superman Year One from Frank Miller. It's a groundbreaking definitive treatment of Superman's classic origin story in honor of his 80th anniversary. So we're getting yet again another origin story of Superman. And it's going to be in a way that we've never heard before. Yeah. But, yeah, we're going to get it retold again for the 100,000th time. But, yeah, this is Frank Miller's take on it. Frank Miller's cool and all, but okay. Next one, we have Batman, Last Night on Earth. This one kind of sounds like an interesting premise here. Batman wakes up in a desert. He doesn't know what year it is or how the Joker's head is alive in a jar beside him. But it's it's the beginning of a quest unlike anything the Dark Knight has undertaken before. Wow. So that's weird.
The thing I like about this one is that it's being written by Scott Schneider and artist Greg Capullo, who've been doing the run on Batman since the New 52. So you've had the Court of Owls storyline and a lot of other stuff in there. I really like their work with Batman, so I'm quite happy to see what they've done with that.
Oh, yeah, they've done some great stories.
I've not read Dark Knight's Metal, but I've heard that's great as well.
Hearing that, it makes me feel like those two came up with this idea. They've gone to the heads at DC and gone like, we want to do this story, but it's not tied in with anything. And then they've gone, right, yeah, okay, you run with it. And they go, oh, why don't we let some other people do it? Honestly, just listening to that, it makes it sound like that's how this has come about, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, I think Scott Snyder's done a great job with Batman since New 52. I think he has done a really good job. So this will be interesting. The Dark Knight's Metal, I haven't read any of those, but I've seen the covers. And
I've heard it's massively mental and also amazing, so I'm going to have to get the graphic novel once it comes out. So
yeah. I've been reading the Rebirth comics and say that there's a recent one that I've loved, which is the War of Jokes and Riddles, which is probably one of my favourite storylines ever.
Ever?
Okay.
Yeah. I love the Riddler anyway, and he doesn't have many good storylines by himself. But this one was just a cool story. I wouldn't spoil it for you guys. You guys definitely read it. It was amazing.
Okay, and next up we have Superman Damned, which is
Batman
on a
Damned.
deserted. Sorry, Batman Damned. Thanks. Batman Damned. On a deserted Gotham City bridge, a body is found. Whispers spread the news. Joker is dead. But is this a dream come true or a nightmare being born? Now Batman and DC's outlaw magician John Constantine must hunt the truth through a Gotham City hellscape. The city's supernatural recesses are laced with hints about a killer's identity, but the Dark Knight's descent into horror will test his sanity and the limits of rationality, as he must face a horror that doesn't wear a mask.
Batman teaming up with John Constantine is immediately on my #1 list already.
That sounds awesome.
There's an image here online. I can see it. It's looking like it's maybe the front cover, which looks awesome as well. It's jumping across the city.
Written by Brian Azzarello and Lee Bermejo, who've written. They do great collaborations together. If you ever read Joker, and one of my favourite comics of all time is Lex Luthor, Man of Steel, or I think they republished it under just the name Lex Luthor, which is where they sort of tell the Superman Lex Luthor relationship from Lex Luthor's point of view, and it's a very, very well done comic. I highly recommend you read that. So I'm quite looking forward to it.
That's cool. We also have Wonder Woman Historia: The Amazons, a Homeric epic of the lost history of the Amazons and Queen Hippolyta's rise to power. Featuring monsters and myths, this 3-book saga spans history from the creation of the Amazons to the moment Steve Trevor washes up on the shores of Paradise Island. So that's the Wonder Woman one. It's kind of interesting. They're doing a Homeric epic. Okay. Next one we have Wonder Woman, Diana's Daughter. That's the working title at the moment, so that might change. It's been 20 years since the world stopped looking to the skies for hope, help, and inspiration. Now the world keeps its eyes down, and the powers that have risen have every intention of keeping things that way. Amongst the scattered, broken resistance, a young woman seeks to reclaim what has been forgotten, and on the way will learn the truth about herself, her heritage, and her destiny. Okay, so as a book, it's going to be about Wonder Woman's daughter. Wonder who the dad is.
Yeah, Batman. And let's just go on to that question right now.
The answer is always Batman to every question.
Meaning of life is Batman.
Well, come on, if you've ever seen Justice League Unlimited, that should have ended with their relationship.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the last book that we have here from their first wave is called The Other History of the DC Universe, a compelling literary series analyzing iconic DC moments and charting socio-political gains through the perspectives of DC superheroes who come from traditionally disenfranchised groups, including Jon Stewart, Extrano, Vixen, Supergirl, Katana, and Renee Montoya, amongst others. At its core, the story focuses on the lives of those behind the costumes and their endeavors to overcome real-world issues. It isn't about saving the world, it's about having the strength to simply be who you are. So yeah. So that's the first wave of comics we've got coming out. Stuart, what is your thought on this whole thing, on DC Black Label?
Yeah, like I say, they sound very interesting. I would think the only one I would definitely pick up and read is the Batman Constantine one. But they've done this quite a lot. I mean, you think of things, I guess, like things like the Killing Joke is technically a sort of Black Label because it doesn't. It was never part of the run of comics at the time. It was just a sort of separate story. Same with, I guess, the Dark Knight Returns. These are all sort of Black Label things. So there have been some fantastic stories come out of it, so you never know, we might get another classic in here somewhere. Some of them don't sound like my cup of tea, but I'll give them a read to see what they're like. But that Batman Constantine one, potentially that Batman with the Joker's head in the desert sounds quite cool as well. That might be quite an interesting one to read, just to see where the hell that went, or how it's even happened would be an interesting one.
So how about you, Ross? What's your immediate reaction to DC Black Label?
I like the theme tune. Yeah, I'm probably the same. They do sound interesting. I might wait until see what other people think before I pick them up, just in case they aren't that great. But yeah, there's definitely the Damned and the Dark Knight on Earth, the Last Night on Earth could be good. I'm not sure another Superman origin story really needs to be told, but you know, if it's done really well and it's great, then good.
It'll be interesting to see what Frank Miller does with it to make it different, because he does go very left field quite a lot. So
I had the unfortunate privilege of reading Holy Terror once, and which is just not good, and don't ever pick it up and read it. So the Superman one I'll be keeping my eye on only out of curiosity before looking at a train wreck kind of thing, but we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You know, it sounds to me it's similar to what Elseworlds was. You know, just the chance to tell some cool, interesting stories outside of the main continuity, which this isn't really that new of a premise for DC to do. The way I see it, they've been doing this all along, having multiple different versions of the heroes. I mean, that's ultimately what's led to a lot of the crises as well, is they end up with all these different versions that, if they're successful, then they continue on for a little while, and then it's, you know, you end up with these different versions of them part of the multiverse. So I guess these are all added to different planets within the multiverse. Yeah. But I think this is cool. I think it sounds like a cool thing, especially Batman Last Night on Earth. That sounds crazy, and it sounds like a lot of fun. So that'd be very cool. So that's it. So DC's Black Label, that's the new imprint that DC will be bringing out. You find more information on dccomics.com. Tell us, are you interested in this? What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments. Wherever you found this podcast, there's always a chance to comment underneath. We're on YouTube or across social media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can follow us on all of those. Just look for Legends of Podcasting. And you can subscribe to us wherever podcasts live. So Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, iTunes Podcasts, you name it, chances are we're there. So that's it from me, and that's it from these guys.